A lot of artists aren't sure if they should be releasing albums or how many singles they should be releasing for albums, or if they should just skip albums entirely. In this video, I want to make the case for singles, and I also want to make the case for albums, and then I want to give you my recommendation for what you should be doing. So first, let me make the case for singles. Just to be clear, when I'm talking singles, I'm talking primarily releasing singles. And the album scenario isn't necessarily you're only releasing albums, but you might only release one or two singles for an album. But let me talk about the case for singles. The main big advantage of this is that you can release music much more frequently. You might be releasing a new single every 4 to 8 weeks, and it allows you to just stay top of mind for all the people that are listening to you, all your fans, all the people that follow you on social media, because you have something new to talk about, let's say every month or every 6 weeks or whatever pace you're keeping up with things. Which also means since you always have something new coming out, you also have something new to make social media content about. You always have a new marketing campaign you can run. You're going to constantly be in front of people's faces, making yourself much harder to forget. But outside of that, there's also some platform specific advantages that you get, which is why this model has become so much popular over the years. For example, on Spotify, when you release a new song, you can only pitch one song per release to Spotify editorial playlist. Meaning, if you release an album, you have to pick one song on the album to pitch for editorial playlist. You can't pitch every song. But if you're releasing singles, since there's only one song on that release, you effectively get to pitch the entirety of the release because you're pitching single by single. Additionally, if you do a release, only one of the songs, whichever one you pitch, is going to be the song that ends up on release radar for all the people that follow you. So there's kind of an inherent advantage to singles in that manner. Now, another advantage to singles is that you're able to iterate and grow song after song, which is especially advantageous for new artists because you might be making music and you're releasing it, you're seeing what the audience thinks about it, and then you kind of put out your next song and see how that compares to the first one. And you're always making music you love, but often artists have a few different types of styles they could do. So it allows you to kind of test the water, see what happens, top another one, and kind of iterate as you're going. Not necessarily like you're making bad music and you're getting better, although sometimes that personal growth journey over time can be quite cool. It's more that you're making great music the whole time, but you're pivoting the style and kind of honing in on which flavor of you the audience loves. So now let's make the case for albums. And again, when I'm talking about albums, I'm not saying you're only releasing albums, but you're doing a kind of more historical type of approach where you're releasing one or two singles and then dropping a whole record. Well, I already talked about the downsides, because basically the downsides are all the opposite of the case for singles. But one huge advantage for the album is that, one, artistically, it allows you to create a much deeper artistic vision. You can create this whole album that kind of ties in song to song, either style of music or lyrically. You can have concept albums, whether it's lyrically or music. You can have the whole album have a whole set of consistency because you're building the whole record at the same time. Now, technically, what you can do is record an album so you have the consistency and the deep kind of integration song to song, and then just trickle it out in singles. But another advantage of albums is that you're releasing a bundle of material at the same time, meaning that your fans can kind of go deeper, right? Because you're not just trickling these things out and you're getting them a little taste, but you give them kind of a binge-worthy experience where you're giving them a huge catalog, like 10 songs, 12 songs, 15 songs, whatever it is, to consume in one fell swoop. So they're much more likely to become a passionate music fan in that instance because they're not just getting like little tastes. Like they might obsess over your album for a longer duration of time. Now, additionally, albums are a much more press-worthy event. Yes, you can do PR and other stuff around singles, but an album is much more likely to get covered just because it's a much rarer event, right? You have to make way more music and release it. It's kind of like how a movie is generally going to make a bigger press wave than a single episode of a TV show, right? It's kind of the same equivalent. A movie or a season of a TV show is big kind of album, but then an individual episode of a TV show is kind of like a single. Now, additionally, you can make merch around an album, and you can make merch around singles, but it's much more typical to make merch around an entire album because it's this big, cohesive kind of cinematic universe, if you will. And similarly, you can tour off of an album. You can tour off of a single. That's kind of weird. It's much more common that an artist is going to tour off of an album. Now, technically, it doesn't matter. You can do whatever the hell you want. I'm just talking kind of like in the normal realm of things. That's how artists treat singles versus albums. Now, before I tell you what I recommend, I want to mention what I specifically do not recommend. If you're a brand new artist and you have an album, I would strongly recommend against just releasing the whole album. And for some reason, a lot of artists think this is a good idea. It is overwhelmingly, most of the time, not a good idea. And the reason is no one knows who you are, right? You don't have any following. You've never marketed anything before, probably. And you're going to throw this album onto the streaming services. No one's going to listen to it. No one's gonna hear that it came out, and it's not going to get on any editorial playlist because no one knows who you are. And basically, you're going to shoot all your shots, right? You only get one pitch to editorial for the whole album, and no one follows you on Spotify or social media, so it just kind of dies. And then what ends up happening is the artists scramble and they're like, oh my God, no one's checking out our album that we spent the last 2 years working on. Let's try to figure out how to market it. But then now you just shot a whole year's worth of music out in one fell swoop, and you have nothing to talk about for the next year because your next record's not going to come out for a while. So you have nothing to talk about on social media. You're probably not going to spend money advertising this album for a whole year. And it just kind of fizzles out, and the first album never really goes anywhere. And I've seen so many artists make this mistake. But it's specifically like that first time. Like, and the reason why artists can sometimes think it's a good idea is, well, I want to build up my catalog so that I have something tangible on there for people to dive into. But now we're going to talk about what I recommend, and you're going to see the contrast here. And generally, what I recommend is, let's say you have a 12-song album, is we're going to plan to do about 9 singles for this album. And just to make this super clear and super easy to follow, let's say it's a new year coming up, you have a 12-song record done. Even if it's not done, doesn't matter. But let's just say you do have it done already before the new year even starts. January comes up. You're going to release a new song. And let's just say you're going to do every 4 weeks. You could do every 4 to 8 weeks. But let's just say you're doing every month. You're going to do January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September. Every month. From January to September, you're going to have a new song. And then in October, the 10th release of the year, you are going to drop the entire album, which is going to have 3 new songs, right? Because you released 9, we have 12. There's going to be song number 10, 11, and 12. We have 3 new songs. The reason why we're doing that is because every month of the year, you're going to release a song. You're going to promote the hell out of it for a month. Tons of social media content. If you have a budget, you're going to do ad campaigns, or if you're going to do other stuff as well, do it. And then the next month, you're going to repeat the whole process again until you get to October when you release the whole record. But we don't just want to release an album that's already completely been released. Most of it's released. But we don't just want to add 1 new song. Technically, you could, but I like to have a couple new songs so that it's actually a little bit more meat. So for the people who have been following along, they're not going to feel completely dissatisfied because there's 3 new songs for them to check out. Then the people who have never heard of you before still get that whole first like brand new album experience. But for the people who've been following along this whole journey, you're rewarding them by giving them a couple of new songs in one fell swoop. And then you're going to ride that album from October, November, and December. Now, in the music world, November and December are kind of dying months just because like there's Christmas music coming out. A lot of artists don't release. A lot of the music industry kind of shuts down. Like a lot of distributors and stuff like that will actually close for like sometimes weeks at the end of the year. And even Spotify Wrapped doesn't even include November and December in their stats. So, music industry is weird November and December, but gives you a chance to release that album in October and then continue ride it in November, continue riding it in December. Now, it really doesn't matter what month you start. If you were to start this whole process in September, for example, you might do a single September, single in October, maybe a single early November, but then just skip December and then continue on January going through until you hit that 9 singles and then drop your album. And if you're worried about the single game like corrupting your artistic vision, then in that case, what you do is before you start this whole release cycle, you pre-record the entire record. So you record the entire damn thing, and then you just trickle it out. Now, if you're still concerned, like, okay, we've satisfied the artistic vision, you can still write your whole album the way it should be. You're worried about, well, how are my fans going to like me trickling out this thing? Well, what you could do is you could offer on your website or Bandcamp or whatever, your download available immediately as well as physical media available immediately. So let's say starting January, you drop the first single, you tell all of your fans, hey, if you want to buy the whole record, you can do that right now on our website or Bandcamp. You can get the downloads, you can get the CD, you can get the vinyl, or you can just wait, and over the next 10 months, it's going to be trickled out on all the streaming platforms. Happy medium. In fact, now your downloads and your physical media are actually more valuable because a lot of people don't care about downloads or physical media anymore. What you've just done, though, is now your physicals and downloadable content isn't just the music, it's an early access ticket to the music. Basically, instead of having to wait 10 months to hear this record, they get to hear it now. So even if they don't like CDs, they don't like vinyl, they don't like downloads, it's an early access ticket. And again, you could also do Patreon if you prefer. And I want to address one big elephant in the room. A lot of people will say, well, look at this artist. Look at Taylor Swift. She only dropped this single and then she dropped her whole album, or whatever these big artists are doing nowadays. And a lot of bigger artists actually have been just dropping whole albums. And there's actually been some signs in the music industry that albums are making a little bit of a comeback. But you have to consider that this is for the biggest artists in the world. If Taylor Swift were to come up with a proprietary music player format and sold it for $300, and her new album was only available on this obscure technology that no one in the world had, it would very likely still hit the Billboard top 10. I'm just betting. And even like Kanye West did that years ago. He sold some weird music player with his new record. I don't know the numbers on it, but I'm pretty damn sure he made millions of dollars. And in fact, I was curious about this, so I looked it up. He generated $2.2 million within 24 hours with this weird proprietary player that he sold for $200, and people still bought it. So imagine if Taylor Swift were to do something crazy like this. It would probably sell like hotcakes. But the moral of the story is that you are not that massive artist, most likely. If you are, thanks for watching my channel. In fact, for the rest of you, thanks for clicking that like button. Yeah. But chances are you're not that massive artist, and that means that you can't necessarily do the things those massive artists do to promote their music. And in fact, that's pretty common for everything I've seen in marketing. When I work with a big artist with like 4 million monthly listeners or 1 million monthly listeners, I don't necessarily recommend the same things as an artist who has 0 or 10,000 or 50,000. And even the artists who are like 100,000 to 500,000, the strategies can be different than the people starting from 0 or the people who are at 1 million. It's the same things don't apply. Doing Facebook ads is great at every stage of an artist's career. However, the specific things they're spending ads on vary a lot. For example, you have a really big artist, they're going to be doing a lot more retargeting. They're going to focus a lot more on merch sales. They're going to focus a lot more on tour sales. And again, specifically retargeting. But when you're working with a small artist, they have practically no retargeting. They're not going to do touring or merch stuff for quite a while, but they're trying to get their streaming numbers up, or they're trying to get some other number up, and then they're going to run ads to do that. Not that the streaming ads aren't worthwhile for the big artists, but considering that they have so much traction happening already on streaming, they don't really need to pull people over to streaming. The song's going to do amazing anyways. And there's other activities that they can afford that all the small artists can't quite afford yet. And vice versa, there's a lot of activities that the smaller artists can do that are super high value, that are super low price, that the bigger artists don't care about because they're dealing with such bigger things. Now, just in case you didn't know, you could have learned all this information a few days earlier if you were subscribed to my free newsletter, Music Marketing Monday. And you can go to musicmarketingmonday.com to join over 7,000 other artists, managers, labels, etc., getting actionable music marketing advice every single Monday. So if you want to learn how you can promote your music on Spotify using Facebook ads, check out this full guide right here, right on my channel. Or if you prefer a organized course with my country list and a community where you can ask questions, you can check out my course, Spotify Growth Machine, right there. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next video. Bye.